Welcome to our inaugural tasting with our growers with the Wine Foundry. We're really proud and excited to have Kendall Hoxsey, who we've had an opportunity to work with for a number of years, of Morgaen Lee Vineyard. And today we're going to be talking about Sauvignon Blanc and what makes Morgaen Lee, I guess. By now, you know that the property is located in Yountville. And if you kind of look at Napa Valley from above, it's this big bowl. And on the east side of the valley, we have a range called the Vaca Range. And on the west side, we've got the Mayacamas. And on both of them, if you're from out of town, they don't look that big, even though we call them mountains. If you're used to, let's say, the Sierras or the Rockies. But when you're climbing around on them, they feel they're definitely big enough, and you're going to run into maybe boar, mountain lions, bear, angry hippies. Any number of things could happen up there. But where Morgaen Lee is situated is right in the heart of Napa Valley, in Yountville, on the Yountville Crossroad. I'd like to introduce Kendall. Kendall, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for growing such remarkable fruit. We've just had budbreak. Your family's been farming a long time. Does budbreak just kind of roll off your back, or is it kind of, is it as exciting for you as it is for the rest of the people?
Oh, it's always exciting to see the vineyards come to life again, and after the dormancy of the winter. So it's always exciting because then we'll start to see the progression and know which ones are further ahead versus the others. So I will say this bud break is kind of unlike any others that I've experienced in my lifetime, just with the shelter in place.
Well, has that impacted? I know usually, the vines kind of take care of themselves right now, right? So they're just kind of reaching toward the sun and trying to create photosynthesis. But from on your side, does it impact how they're managed right now?
No, because we're considered essential. We're farming. So we've had no stop to the farming practices. Certainly we've had a few days, nights really, of frost. So our vineyard manager, Jim, has been up the past 2 nights, I think at 1:30 in the morning. And we turned on the wind machines. So nothing, pretty much it's keep calm, farm on.
And can you talk about that a little bit? Because this is frost can be a sensitive thing for us in the industry, especially around this time of year. So when you refer to wind machines, what's the goal of that, or how does it work?
The wind machine is meant to basically, take the cold away from the vines and, the early buds. So invert it with a little bit of warmer air. So it just circulates air pressures.
And just enough time for the temperatures to rise a little bit, and in the morning when the sun kind of breaks through, and then we're okay.
Exactly. And pretty much, I'll say this. Our vineyard manager, Jim Del Bondio, has been with us since he was 8 years old. His father was my great-grandfather's vineyard manager. So if anybody knows the land, it's him.
That is amazing. And that's one of the things that before we kind of started and everyone was kind of chiming in, that's what's so remarkable about the property. You even just walking amongst those vines, you'd get a sense of history and the age of the vines. And it's just a real, it's really exciting to be a part of that. So your family has been farming. Can you just tell us a little bit about the history of your family in the valley and in wine?
Yeah, so it was my great-great-grandfather, Joseph Palissa, who purchased property. I believe the story that I've been told was that it was with a $10 gold coin for 10 acres. And basically we've been farming ever since. When he passed away, my great-grandfather, Andy Palissa, took over, and Andy, as we all referred to him as Pop, he took over when he was 18 years old. Ran the farm, ran the family, and added parcel after parcel. And even another important piece about him was that he was on the planning commission when we passed the preserve in 1968.
Okay, so it's amazing. There's been, for those of you from outside of Napa, Napa has grown dramatically, and the face of Napa Valley in terms of plantings and stuff have kind of changed the landscape dramatically. So kind of be tied into something for a long time, and also being part of that plan in terms of how are we going to make this happen in such a confined space, being surrounded by mountains, and then the bay. How do we make this happen? So it's really fantastic that your family's been a part of it. I think we should kind of just, for those at home, I'm actually tasting our 2019 Sauvignon Blanc from Morgaen Lee. And if you have a glass with you, I feel, welcome you to raise it up, whether it's water, wine, or whatever. And a big cheers during this new form of tasting in classes that we're doing from across the country. So thank you for joining us. I am going to get an official cheers here. I'm going to we'll go to our first question here. We're going to go back to Austin, Texas, to Rhonda and Bruce. I know you guys were going to ask something. And what I'm going to do is we're going to try that again. There you go. Sorry about that. I was just trying to play a joke on you.
No problem.
I try to mute them all the time too.
Yes. It's key to a happy relationship.
Right. I think the primary question, and a lot of this comes from Stu. Stu has talked about your family farming for a long time. They've talked about your vineyard practices. Stu likes to say that Morgaen Lee's a little old school in its approach. It utilizes less vineyard manipulations. The cordons and the shoots roam and spread throughout the vineyard. How does that help to bring about the nuances, the subtlety, and the character of Morgaen Lee? Because from our perspective, because we're big Sauvignon Blanc fans, from our perspective, Morgaen Lee's really different in its fruit expression than a lot of Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc.
Basically, to give you just a little background, we got the gentleman that owned the property before hired my great-grandfather to farm it. And initially, I don't know what it was planted to before, but Pop, he looked at the spacing and everything like that, and he said, we're not going to go east to west. We're going to go north to south. So that, number one, just economy, it made less turns of the tractor because it's only 30 acres. So that was the main difference. And then with the Sauvignon Blanc, especially certain areas, as you all have seen pictures and the old vines, those are from 1978 planting. So those are pretty special. And those are the old gnarled vines and everything like that. The other key component of Morgaen Lee is that we have been, this was my dad and Jim Del Bondio, our vineyard manager. They decided to farm organically starting in the late 80s. And so we've been doing that consistently. And basically, we don't spray anything other than dusting sulfur. We put our compost every other row every year. So it's all of our own components that way. So it's got a very diverse and we do a petiole sample as well as a soil sample every 3 years. And so we're checking to make sure that it's got all the nutrients that the soil and the vines need. And so pretty much we're always really in balance. My dad said once that it took 10 years for him to really feel the expression of the vineyard after going to organic.
That's great.
Your question.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
hey, Alec, you've been kind of working with the vines over there. Anything that you see when you're working when you're working on the vines and playing with the fruit out there? Let's unmute you here.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
So I think it's pretty amazing just because we don't need fertilizer at all. We just use cover crops for soil health. nutrition, and otherwise we just have our own compost. So we do lab confirmations just to make sure that basically we have the nutritional balance, and I think that's all I have on that end.
Yeah, and when you talk about cover crops, so for those who aren't familiar with it, like different vineyards will plant different crops between the rows to, in effect, cover the ground, hence cover crops. So what goes in, like what kind of decisions would be made from either Kendall or Alec, like how, why, when you're making these decisions with cover crops?
So we use mustard for nitrogen fixation. So that basically just gives nitrogen into the soil, which helps with just vine growth, as well as oats and vetch for more of erosion control. And so we'll usually have those laid out in the field during the rainy months to prevent any erosion.
Perfect.
And that was the my dad created that his own cover crop mix, probably with the help of Wilbur Ellis, but that's, we give him thank you for creating that, because it's worked really well.
Fantastic. That is great. Thank you. Why don't we get another question? Allison, can you unmute yourself? We'll go up to Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, so what do you find yourself more interested in? Do you find yourself more interested in the farming aspects or producing and doing winemaking?
So I actually have my MBA in wine business from Sonoma State.
Okay.
So I really enjoy the business side. So the jobs that I've kind of been doing the past few years have been making sure that we'll sell as much as possible. And now that my sister is running the brands, doing the sales and marketing, making sure that she has what she needs, and creating relationships such as we have with Wine Foundry. And then actually I'm married to our winemaker who makes the Elizabeth Rose brand.
Okay.
So I've got everything.
It's sort of all over. Nice. And what's your favorite part of your job? What do you enjoy doing the most?
I love walking out, being with the clients and kind of just hearing what they're looking forward to. And I mean, I love that my job is different every day. I was a history major for my bachelor's degree. And so that's something else I love. I love looking at the continuity. And so especially right now, I look at, all right, my great-grandfather made it through the Depression. We can do it.
Right, got the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, Kendall. Why don't we go to the warmer climate of Los Angeles, and Phil Gurin chiming in from the realm of television and film. Phil?
Yeah, I have to read my question that I wrote because I'm drinking my wine right now. And
That's good. And in fact, you could leave out every third word and it'll make it very interesting.
Allow me to brag about my latest rosé that arrived 2 days ago. I'm drinking.
Fantastic.
Okay, I love Sauv Blanc and have been tempted to make some with the Wine Foundry for years. I once did a Chard. I did it all steel. We skipped Mallow. It was great, but it didn't last very long in the cellar. So I know Chard and Sauvignon Blanc are different. They're not the same. But I don't want to make a white, and I would love to make a white, and I love Yountville. I would love to make a white, but I don't want to make a white that's just not going to last. Is there a way to make a white, a Sauv Blanc that can go a while? Can we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I actually asked my husband a few questions. So his advice was, what were the bottling closures? Was it sparged with nitrogen before you bottled it? What were the free sulfur levels? What was the pH, residual sugar? And then what were the storage of the case goods? But for example, and I mean, we will use about 25 tons of Morgaen Lee for our own brand. And actually what we do is we'll pick 3 different times. So our winemaker, Christy Kofert, who's also the director of winemaking for our custom crush, she will pick at 20, 21, 22 and a half. And what then she'll do is press them, and she'll actually do a sur lie for 9 months. So we don't release that typically until September 1 of the following year. And so, you know, it's got a nice round mouthfeel, pretty similar to at least what I'm tasting. But yeah, I mean, I think we keep 5 cases of everything, and we've been tasting some of the, I'm going to say probably early 2000 and teens, and they're still tasting rather nice.
So like how long would you think you can make a Sauv and cellar it? What do you think?
Oh, well,
2
I mean,
years,
for example,
3 years, 4 years? What do you think?
yeah, I mean, the other thing is you can also bottle age it. So that's another thing you could do.
What do you mean? Just
So for example, what we're doing right now, we're trying this project where we're using some of the Morgaen Lee, and then we will, it'll go through all the fermentation, and then we'll bottle it, and then we'll bottle age it for 5 years, and then we'll release it to the public. So we'll just store it in our cellar.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, and that way it has secondary and tertiary aromatics. You know, Patrick Sabo is our director of winemaking, and what we do with, for those who are not familiar with the kind of the fermentation approach that we take, we make wine for a lot of different people, as you know, and some people like really big and bold on the spectrum, or light and lean on the spectrum, or somewhere in between. What we try to aim for, what we think makes Morgaen Lee, for the lack of a better thing, is it's got this beautiful, vibrant acidity, right? And so by default, we don't want it to sit too long on vine. Kendall kind of threw out this thing called pH before, which is your acid strength. And the longer that the grapes stay on vine, your sugars accumulate, but you lose that vibrancy, what's going to create that salivary trigger and make the wine feel really lively in the mouth. So we have a kind of maybe a little bias to pick a little bit early, and then we ferment it different ways. So we ferment a portion of it in stainless steel because then it's not going to soften the wine really. It'll kind of keep it focused. You're not getting any characters that will impart aroma or flavor characteristics. And we have a number of concrete eggs. They're not technically concrete, but everyone calls them concrete eggs. And that kind of gives a different textural element. And then in some vintages, we'll also do a third fermentation. And I know Allison's done this, where we will also ferment in neutral oak barrels. And then when you're sitting down at the blending table, you take a little bit of this, you take a little bit of that, and you're able to kind of build this nuance and layer according to your specific style. Yeah, and Kendall, echoing Kendall, we're definitely going to have the pH to kind of let it there to have some ageability, and then checking out the SO2 levels, and we definitely sparge the bottles to make sure there's no oxygen in there. So,
Stu, can I just ask a dumb question, because I'm a dummy when it comes to
this
stuff.
Yes, you are, but of course you can.
So if we wanted to have that bright, vibrant acidity, is that, I mean, obviously it fades over time. What would you think shelf life, or do we have to sacrifice that for a more age-worthy Sauvignon Blanc?
Yeah, so Steve's going to chime in, but basically you're going to get a couple of things. So your acid levels really won't change. It's going to be the perceived acid levels. And Steve, what did you kind of want to chime in with there? I saw your hand go up.
Thank you. Well, I actually had my little virtual blue hand chime up, so I'm going to lower that now. But,
thank you. I saw that.
Yeah, so Phil, it really kind of like what's to Stu's point, it really comes down to the blending of it. I'm drinking a 2014 Morgaen Lee right now. It's still very bright, vibrant. It's still got a lot of fruit on the nose. It's still, it's changed for sure. And kind of to Stu's point, the tertiary kind of aromatics start coming out a little bit more, but which I really like personally. But I think it really all just comes down to how you blend.
Sounds like I'm going to be making some Sauvignon Blanc this year with you guys.
Totally.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
literally while we're on this call.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for signing while we're on the line there. Hey, Phil, thank you for the again really thoughtful questions. We're going to come. Can we go to Oklahoma City? And Pish Patel, who's made some Sauvignon Blanc. I know he had a question. Peach, hope you're doing well, and it's good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. So Kendall, from a business perspective, what keeps you up at night outside of the coronavirus stuff, right? So just from a day-to-day, as someone who is managing a vineyard, that's a lot of asset, that's a lot of responsibility. You know, 2 or 3 things, what are really, from a farming perspective, what are the things that are just real trigger points that you guys are measuring and monitoring from a business perspective?
Well, so I don't know if my dad is listening with my mother, but he would say the government regulations.
Yeah, that's real deal.
It is. So I also sit on the board of California Association of Wine Grape Growers. So part of our job is to lobby state as well as federal government on both, on all issues. You know, luckily I will say that we don't have so many coming at us, at least just in terms of our farming practices. Certainly with labor. But, you know, another thing I will say is that a lot of our crew, they've been working with us longer than I've been alive. So, you know, we've got loyal guys. We house quite a lot of them. And we're so happy that we can help give them that American dream with that. To answer more of your question, I will say the government regulations is one. And then I'd say any sort of weather issues. I mean, I would say kind of economy is another one. When I started in this role, it was 2014, good times. Now with the cavernization of Napa Valley, we're in a pretty good spot because we'll sell quite a lot. We'll have sparkling varietals at another vineyard. So we'll sell quite a lot to Mom, Schramsberg, those houses, and then obviously the Sauvignon Blanc. So we've got a very diversified business. I'd say time and generations have really perfected this. So we're pretty lucky that way. But yeah, those are the 2 things. And so right now, my issue is waiting this out, and let's see then if I'll get some of the smaller wineries. I've got my conglomerate contracts with the bigger houses, but I'm hopeful that I'll see the smaller wineries also come back and be ready. But it's a remains to be seen situation right now.
Thank you, Peach and Kendall, for sharing that and sharing, you know, some of the challenges with the industry. Let's take one last question from Justin Chin. Justin is based in San Francisco, and Justin, congratulations on your recent accomplishments. Justin, what do you do? What you just passed a big hurdle in your wine education.
Thanks, Stu. I recently passed my advanced sommelier examination. It was my 2nd attempt, but I'm glad I got it done. It was a much harder exam.
Congratulations, Justin.
Thank you. In terms of questions, Phil actually asked a very similar question, so I don't want to be repetitive. So I think he did that for me, so thank you, Phil. Yeah, it was about the ageability with Sauvignon Blanc and what's different with Morgaen Lee. I think, you know, vintage variation's important too. You know, depending on the year, it can be much warmer, so your acid levels are going to be lower as well. So that can dictate how much longer you can store it and sell it or whatnot.
Hey, Justin, because you sell your wine and you work with a Japanese restaurant, so a yakitori place, and you've also worked with fish in a Japanese restaurant as well as at Gary Danko. So it's all about food for you. What about the ageability of your wines and how it plays out when you're sharing it with your clients in San Francisco restaurants?
Absolutely. So I still have the 2013s, which is the first vintage I worked with from Morgaen Lee, and it's still good. It's awesome. Acid's still there. Wasn't as high as some of the other vintages, but it still has plenty of life. Still fresh. I think it's starting to turn in terms of the color a little bit. It's a little darker, but you know, it doesn't mean that you can't have it with just different food. I mean, it really depends on. So when it was fresh, I felt like there was a lot more pronounced fruit from the wine. But now I just opened one I think in January, and the fruit's getting more dried, so you're getting more of those tertiary notes. But I feel like a lot of herbs are coming out of that, so I think you can pair different dishes with that. It'll be fun. Yeah. Really versatile still with SB. I think you can go, again, if it's really fresh and clean, young vintage, you can do something with like sushi, of course, sashimi. But as it gets older, I think it's getting that complexity, and it'll go with a lot of meat dishes as well.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah,
Thank
pleasure.
you. Hey, Kendall, you, in addition to kind of, talking to us about the fruit and the growing, you also, you have some brands, right? And do you kind of want, and you also make it from the property. Can you please tell us, share some information about the wines that you guys are making?
Absolutely. So our Ghost Block is our high end, and that's all single vineyards. So we'll have the Morgaen Lee Sauvignon Blanc. We have a Ghost Block vineyard. That's our single vineyard. And then we have the Ghost Block Estate, which is at Rock Cairn. I don't know if anyone's visited Napa, but it's the vineyard right across the street from Brick's Restaurant, where all the mustard usually is. So that's our Rock Cairn vineyard, and that's a very special place. And then we have a Zinfandel from the winery estate, and that's named after my great-grandparents' last name, Alyssa. And then we have the Oakville Winery brand, and then the Elizabeth Rose brand. And so Elizabeth is my middle name. And so that we started out just wanting to do a rosé, and we do a Syrah Grenache Cinsault rosé. And it took off. And so now now my husband's the winemaker for that brand. And we do a red blend called Choc-a-Bloc, a Montepulciano, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and then we used to do a little Flora, and we're the only grower in the state of California of Flora. It was created in the 30s at Davis, and it's a blend of Semillon and Gewürztraminer. So it's a hybrid grape, and we'll grow it mainly for Stromsburg for their Cremant label.
Wow, and I can imagine the aromatics on that would be incredible, right? Yeah.
My great grandfather called it pinkies because it's got a real pink color to it.
Wow. Hey, we want to be respectful of your time, but really, does anybody else have any more questions that they would like to raise? You could raise your hand. Bruce and Rhonda?
Yeah, just a real quick question. God bless you for farming and growing in Napa for generations. Because so many, second and third generations are getting out of the business and selling off. How do y'all keep at it? How do you keep the legacy going? Because so much assets tied up in the lands and everything else. How do y'all do that, and how do you remain committed to it?
Well, at least I'd say that, growing up watching my father, I saw how tirelessly he worked, and that was for the love of his grandfather. He watched his example, and it was something that he never lost sight of the goal of that. This is a special place. The thing my great-grandfather always liked to say is, no one owns the land. We're merely stewards of it. And I'd say, from at least my own experience, however limited, it is a special place. I can't imagine being anywhere else. And I feel so privileged to show my daughter that. And we were never pushed into any one direction. We simply fell into it based on our individual skills. My sister is a master seller. She could sell ice to the Eskimos. So that's why she's the director of sales and marketing. I'm a little more reticent. So that's why I'll be in the vineyards and the winery production a bit more. But I certainly hope my daughter has the same love for it. And just even every walk that we take, looking around, it's a magical spot.
Wow, Kendall, that's fantastic. Tracy, you have a question?
Yeah, hi Kendall. I was just curious how much opportunity you get to see what winemakers, either through the foundry or other customers that you have, see what they do with your grapes, what the finished products turn out like.
I always want to taste more. So at least I'm glad I'm tasting this. We sell probably to about altogether 10 different wineries in Morgaen Lee alone. So for instance, one is another buyer is Voss, which is a New Zealand company. So they'll pick the earliest at 18. And then actually we'll sell to the Illumination brand. So I love to taste and see what our clients are doing with the wines. Absolutely.
And then does that feed into some of your thinking about what you're doing in the vineyard, down the road?
I wouldn't say that it changes my mind, but at least then I'll kind of see the expression of the wine coming through, and perhaps then, talk about it, or at least then my sister and I can see like, oh, that's an interesting note that they've got there, or what did you guys do? So I never turn away an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, Alec, Kendall, thank you for helping us, just tending those vines and producing such remarkable fruit and carving out time. Wishing everybody, as we navigate these waters, let's do it together, okay? Let's do it together. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Hey, Stu, before we go, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm assuming everybody here has a glass of wine with them, because why wouldn't you?
Well, it
Did
depends on the
everybody bring-
time zone. It depends on the time zone, and we also want to be respectful. But yes, Phil. Yeah.
And I was in the car, Phil. I couldn't have a glass of wine. I'm now back at my house.
Okay, Jenny, I'm very happy about this. I'm just wondering, the TV producer in me is looking for an image. If everybody has either a glass, or do you have your bottles? My guess is you're drinking your own wine right now. What if everybody held up a glass and their bottle, and we put it in the frame so Stu and Phil and Valerie have this image of all of us with our bottles and our glasses? What do you think?
It would be fantastic. Phil is, as some of you may know, is some shows that you may watch on television. He might be the person behind them. So we'll do.
So if everybody has their glass, hold it up so that
Sharath, can you get a screenshot there for us, buddy?
We need everybody. Hold on, I see some people have gone to get some bottles. We want to see the labels. We want to see labels.
I have a government, speaking of what Kendall was saying earlier, I have a government warning label on mine, because it is we haven't put the official label on there, so I just have the government warning.
Private use only. It's private use only.
Philip is going into my office right now.
Private use only, dude. It's just for you. It's just amongst friends.
That's right. Philip, I hope if you could sterilize my office, that'd be fantastic afterwards. Hey, wishing everybody health and happiness in this turbulent time, okay? Thank you for sharing time with us. Cheers.
Let's stay safe. Let's be careful out there.
Absolutely. Sharath, I hope you're getting a shot.
Drink wine.
Cheers.
Drink wine.
All right.
Be well, everyone.
Hey, thank you so much. And we'll put the recording of this up for everybody. Hey, thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Stu.
you. You got it, guys. Bye, guys.